Hey everybody, Brian here. In today's video we're continuing the topic of synchronization. This time we're going to try to synchronize musical notation playback with the playback of a music video. Now, did you know in some countries they take synchronization so seriously that they construct entire complexes solely in support of synchronization, such as the Moscow Center for Synchronized Swimming. And judging by the results of the Russian synchronized swimming team in various worldwide competitions, it seems like they're achieving really good results. Now, obviously, synchronizing music notation isn't on that same level of grandeur, but it's still something we can approach with discipline and strive for excellence. So let's see how to go about that. Okay, so let me show you all the pieces of this puzzle and how they have to come together to achieve this end goal of having musical notation playback be in sync with a musical video performance. In this case, I have a project that amounts to a music video / short film, and in this project I play solo guitar. It's a Bach piece, prelude in D minor. And as you see in the video, I didn't record with a microphone nearby. Initially I had audio direct from the video recording from the various takes, and because I wanted higher quality audio, I then recorded the performance separately, so I ended up with a studio recording. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that what you have is some music video and you already have the audio in that video as you want it to be, and now it's just a matter of you having your musical notation play in sync with that audio, so that ultimately you end up with something like this. So let me jump over to the notation program I'm using. In this case, I'm using Guitar Pro 8, and here's the tablature, the notation. So notice how I have beats per minute shown as 91. That was just an arbitrary choice. If I play back this tab here in Guitar Pro, there's no way I can expect that to be in sync with the music video, because in the video I might be playing at 90 something beats per minute at one point, and then jump up to say 100 and something beats per minute, maybe down to 80 something beats per minute. So you get the idea. What we have to do here is have the tempo changes adapt to the actual performance, so that when we play this, it's actually playing in sync with the performance. And that's where Logic's Smart Tempo function comes into play. So in the previous video, I went over using Smart Tempo to create a tempo map from the video audio so that you could later conform the studio audio to fit that, which resulted in a tempo map. And once you have that tempo map, you're then ready to apply that map to the notation. So if you went through that procedure that I showed in a previous video of conforming a studio recording to fit the audio in a video, then you already have the map. And you can just skip ahead to the point where we apply that map to the music notation. But for those who haven't done that, I'm going to just go through that process here once again. And the first thing you do is go to File, Project Settings, Smart Tempo. And I'm going to keep things as they are here. Under Options, Export Tempo Resolution, you might see that it's initially set to beats. I recommend smooth because for the purposes of syncing music notation, it's not important to have tempo changes happening every single beat. So smooth in this case I think gives a better result for purposes of syncing up music notation, because we don't need ultra high fidelity with those tempo changes. Then I'll close out of there. Now I'm going to click on the region containing the audio that's to be synced up with the music notation, and then choose Tempo, remove tempo information. That's because if I use Smart Tempo previously on this region, I want to erase it so I can start from a blank page. Okay? And now I'm going to double click. Initially you'll see it open up in the track editor, so click Smart Tempo. Now when you hit Analyze, Logic is going to look at the rhythmic structure of that audio and determine where are the bars and beats. So we hit Analyze to do the initial analysis. And in this case, Logic thinks that we're in 4/4 time. In fact, this particular piece by Bach is in 3/4 time. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that in Smart Tempo, your time signature is how it should be. In this case, I need to switch to 3/4, and that'll redo the analysis. Okay, it looks like it kept it at 4/4. I've noticed that little glitch with Logic. I have to do this twice. Choose it again, 3/4. So Smart Tempo redid the analysis to 3/4 time. And I'm not sure why I was seeing this 3/4 indicated at bar 17. There's no actual change. It's 3/4 prior to that as well. But in any case, sometimes Logic acts really weird. And I'm going to zoom in. And let's talk a little bit about this interface, about the Smart Tempo editor. So when you start it out, it's going to be in the so-called hint mode. And you'll know you're in that mode when you see this orange button lit up. And what is a hint? So these prominent gray lines are the first beat of each bar, and Logic calls those downbeat hints. And then these less prominent gray lines, these are the additional beats in a bar, and Logic calls those simply beat hints. So right now we have the initial tempo map that Logic has computed. And one thing I tend to do right off the bat is just look at the analysis visually and just confirm that it makes sense. And in this case, I see the bars are fairly equal in length, so it looks like the 3/4 timing is probably captured pretty well. Now let me go over to the music notation program. It's very important that the number of bars you have here in the notation editor matches what you end up with in Logic after doing the Smart Tempo analysis. So here we see there are 47 total bars. And notice the piece starts out in 3/4, but towards the end I play a little bit in free time. I add some chords, some artificial harmonics. So towards the end I'm adding a 4/4 time signature change. And that's happening for a couple bars. And then I go back to 3/4 as I play these ascending artificial harmonics. And then back to 4/4 as I end the piece. So we need to capture that in Smart Tempo as well. So I'll show you in a little bit how to do that. For now, I'm just going to zoom in and give it a listen to and make sure that these hints are lined up. And you can readjust those as needed. And looking at the video at the same time can help because you might see in the performance where you're playing on a downbeat, where you're starting a bar. So I like to have the video visible and then give it a listen. So in this case, I actually play this note a little earlier than what Logic is showing. So there's where I'm playing it. So I'm going to move that one back a little bit. I prefer to do this process iteratively, so I'll look at a few bars at a time. In this case, I've taken a listen to up through around bar 13 or so, and I know things are looking fine. In your case, you might have additional orange lines, depending on if you thought things were off. So now I'm just going to hit Apply Changes. And notice how that bar 8 lined up now with my adjusted hint. And I'm going to lock in what we have here from the beginning. So I click here, the first beat, and then I'm going to click the last beat in bar 13, shift click, and then you can right click anywhere in this selected region, go to lock range. So now Logic won't look at these bars in the subsequent analyses we do. And so you get the idea, you give it a listen to, you adjust things as needed. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Okay, now I've gone up through bar 28 and I've adjusted a couple more downbeat hints. So again, I'm going to hit Apply Changes. Notice once again how those adjusted downbeat hints are now lining up with the bars. And I'm going to lock these bars. So I'll click here, the first beat in bar 14. And then I'll click the last beat of bar 27. And then right click in this selection, lock range. Now I'll continue and skip ahead a bit. So now I've adjusted a few more of these hints and I'm going to hit Apply Changes. And again, these hints are now lining up with the beginning of these bars. And once again, we'll lock in those bars. So I'm going to hit the first beat in bar 28, shift, and then the last beat in bar 42. And right click that selection, lock range. Okay, and now we're going to work on the ending, which is a little more nuanced, because remember, this is where we have to make sure that we have these time signature changes and that these notes are matching up. For instance, I have these half notes here, here. So at this point, towards the end, This is where I add that 4/4 signature change. So I'm going to add a downbeat hint here and set that to 4/4. And there are 3 bars that'll be in 4/4 time, and then to 3/4 for 1 bar when I'm playing these ascending artificial harmonics, and then back to 4/4 when I play these last 2 harmonics. And now here's where the other 4/4 bar begins. That's 1 chord as a half note, here's the next one as a half note, and then the next 4/4 bar is here on this chord. That'll have these 3 bars here in 4/4 time. So I'll hit apply changes. And now we want to add a 3/4 signature at the point when I play these ascending artificial harmonics. And then after that, back to 4/4 time as I play these last 2 harmonics, and then let it sustain for a bar. So this is what we're going to work on. Those ascending harmonics begin around here. Okay, so they start right here. So I'm going to place a downbeat hint here at bar 46. Change that to 3/4. Here's where I want to go back to 4/4 time. So now I'm going to add another downbeat hint at that harmonic. Change that to 4/4. And before I apply changes, I'll just lock in what we have so far. So I'm going to click here, first beat of bar 43, shift, and click this beat here. So for these 3 bars, I'm going to lock in the result. So lock range. And now I'm going to apply the changes that I made based on these downbeat hints that I just placed. Apply changes. Give it a listen. So at this final harmonic hit, that should be where bar 48 is starting. So I can place the downbeat hint here. And now I'll hit apply changes. Okay, we're almost done. Now we're going to go out of this hint mode into so-called beat marker mode. Logic doesn't give you a visual cue when you're in beat marker mode. What you do is just get out of hint mode. So you click that orange button, and now you're in beat marker mode. So here's where we'll do some final adjustments. Notice here this chord is in the middle of a beat. I don't think that makes sense. I want to have this chord starting on a beat so that both these chords are 2 half notes. So I actually need to unlock these bars that I locked earlier. Just unlock these. And so now what you can do in beat marker mode is you can move a marker if you're hovering the cursor on that point. You can set a downbeat, you can scale a selection, you can move all, you can scale left, move right. I just want to move a marker, so I'm going to move this one to the left so that that lines up with that chord. And just so that these 2 beats are equal, I'm going to move this marker as well. And so that these final 2 beats of the bar are equal, I'll move this one over a little bit. And something else we can pay attention to here at the end, at this bar 46 with the 3/4 time signature. That's where those ascending harmonics come in. And the way I notated it, it's a quarter note followed by 4 eighth notes. So rhythmically you feel that as 1, 2, and 3, and 1. So what we can do, and this probably is a little overkill, but remember at the beginning of the video I said we should strive for excellence, have discipline, like a synchronized swimming team. So we can actually move these markers a little bit. So this is where that first eighth note starts. So this is beat 2 starting here, and then beat 3 starting here. So beat 1, 2, and 3, and then the next bar. So anyway, it's good practice to understand how to do this level of editing. And then the rest looks fine. Now notice when you're in beat marker mode and you make these changes, you don't have the option to apply changes. That's because in beat marker mode, there are no changes to apply because you are directly, manually making those changes yourself. You're telling Logic, hey, you don't have to do any work, I'm doing the work for you, this is where these beats are going to go. Okay, so we've completed the analysis. And as a sanity check, let's just count the number of bars we have. So this is starting at bar 2. And here is the last sustained note. So this shows 48 bars. But because we're starting at bar 2, it's actually 47. And that corresponds to what we have here. This last bar, where I have this sustained harmonic, is bar 47. Okay, so now you confirm that everything looks good in terms of the bars and the time signatures. Now we're ready to apply this to the project and get our tempo map. And what this will do is take all the tempo changes that Smart Tempo has detected here and put them onto this tempo track here. So make sure you have this tempo view up here in the project. Now go to Edit, Apply Region Tempo to Project Tempo. And notice how these two options are checked off: align downbeat to nearest project downbeat and maintain relative positions of all the regions. I tend to find that leads to the kind of results I need, but depending on what you have going on in the project, you might have video with time code, and so you need to have very specific placement of certain regions. And if you notice after hitting apply that some things are getting placed in a way where they're now offset from where they have to be in relation to the video, you might have to come back and redo this apply region tempo. Maybe clicking something on or turning something off. Let me just hit apply with these checked off. And show a little bit of movement here. Not sure what that was about. It should be lined up exactly with this track above it. In any case, I'm not going to move any automation data. Okay, looks like they're lined up. You can zoom in to confirm. So we're starting at beat 50. In Smart Tempo, that was beat 2. But that's because Smart Tempo is working in its own rhythmic world. It's basing the bars and beats on what is seen in the region. And because this region doesn't have anything prior to it, so bar 1 here in this Smart Tempo corresponds to somewhere up here, bar 49 in the project. So just something to be aware of. And I'm going to undo that just so you see what happens if you make a different choice when applying the Smart Tempo analysis to the project. So let me go back to Apply Region Tempo to Project Tempo. Let's say I did not choose this align downbeat, the nearest project downbeat, and then I hit apply. Notice how the music is no longer starting at the first beat of a bar. So you don't want that. I'm going to undo that, go back to Edit, Apply Region Tempo to Project Tempo, and make sure that is checked off. Apply. Here we are where we need to be, starting at bar 50 and ending here at bar 97. So that's our 47 bars. So the structure from this Smart Tempo analysis, the 47 bars here, as well as the time signature changes, have been transferred, they've been applied to the project. And now we have exactly what we need to make the music notation playback in sync. So to get this tempo map into your notation editor, one way you can do that is to create a MIDI track here. So I'll go to Track, New Software Instrument Track, and it wants to add a piano track. I'm going to press Y to bring up the library and change that to a guitar sound. That's just so that the staff will make more sense when we import it into the notation editor. Have a better idea of how to treat that import. And I'm going to create a MIDI region, and I want it to end here in bar 97. That corresponds to the last bar that I had in the music notation. Now on the beginning side, this is where Logic can be kind of quirky. Notice how after we applied the Smart Tempo map, it inserted this time signature 3/4 here at bar 48. The music starts at bar 49. And I've noticed from trial and error that in order for MIDI to export properly, the region has to start before a time signature change. I have no idea why. So I'm going to move this region back to bar 47, and I'm going to double click. And I'm just going to add a note, one note for the whole duration. How about a C4? And make sure it's beginning at the start, so position 47, 1, 1, 1. That's correct. And then it's going to end there at the beginning of bar 97. Now click on this region, and then right-click, Selection as MIDI file. You could do the same thing by going to File, Export, Selection as MIDI file. So Selection as MIDI file, and I'm going to save it Because of all the trial and error I did to figure out how to get this to work, I have these previous versions. So here I am on the 9th try. It took me 9 times to get this right. I'll save that. And now I'm going back to Guitar Pro. You can do likewise in whatever notation software you're using. Let's go to File, Import, MIDI, and now choose that MIDI file that you just exported from Logic. Here's mine, it's Tempo Map 9. Open, and make sure it says On New Score. For some reason it wants to use a piano, which we don't need. We don't need the extra staff. This step might not be so important, but I like to just make things line up a little better logically. So it's a guitar, so I'm gonna choose guitar. Time signature's on. You definitely want tempo on. In any case, it can't hurt to just keep these all on. If you have triplets involved in your music, then make sure you check that on. So this looks good. Import. So remember we added a couple extra bars in Logic prior to the beginning. So we have this MIDI region trimmed to the left a little bit prior to the music. The music starts at bar 50. We have this region starting at bar 47. So 3 extra bars before the music begins. But for some reason, when we export it, Logic adds yet an additional bar, which is this empty one, this bar 1. So we actually have 4 bars that we don't need. So I'm just going to select these bars, because we know the music starts here, where these tempo changes come in. And I'm just going to go to bar, right click, bar, delete bar. So now notice we have 47 bars here, with the correct time signature changes, all the tempo information's there. Now we go back to our notation of the music, and I'm going to copy all, so Control A, or whatever kind of keyboard you're using to select all, and then copy. Now go back to the MIDI file you just imported, add a track, so I'm clicking this plus button. I'll just keep it named as is. Everything here looks fine. Okay, and now Control V, or whatever key combo you need to do to paste in what we just copied. And voila, there it is. Now that's the music with the tempo changes so that this would play in sync with the video. So you might have to change some names, make some changes here, which isn't a big deal. So I'll copy this title, paste it in. So now things are looking like they were before. And now we're going to make some changes so that the display of this notation looks the way we want it for the purposes of overlaying it on top of a music video. So now that we copied over the notation, we can go to that first track that had the MIDI import. Just delete that. So go to track, delete, yes. Now we're left with just the notation. The time signature changes are here as we need them, so everything looks good. Now to have this kind of display of the notation, obviously we need to make some changes in the editor. So here I like having 4 bars, 1 line of 4 bars. So back in Guitar Pro, we need to change this display. So the first thing I do is I go to File, Style Sheet, and I change the format. I find that 300 by 100 tends to look good, and also go to bar, system layout, fixed bar count per system. I want to have 4. I also want same size for all bars. That isn't too important, but I like to choose that anyway. Okay, so things are looking pretty good. We're almost there, but we don't want this displayed in this fashion. We want to have things moving horizontally. So the next step, click on this item here that shows these 3 boxes, and what we want is page horizontal. And notice what will happen when we press play. So now this lends itself to a screen recording because the tab that's being played back is always being shown in a predictable part of the screen. But I don't want these tempo changes actually showing up in the tab. So one other change to do, if you're not using Guitar Pro 8 and you're using Guitar Pro 7, you're going to have to go into the tempo automation and hide each one individually, which is kind of annoying. So you would have to select one, choose the hide automation, check the next one, hide, so on. That's actually why I upgraded to Guitar Pro 8. We can actually choose all the bars. So I'm going to Control A to choose everything. And now go to Tools, Show Command Palette, and now hide tempo automation. Choose that, click here, where high tempo automation shows up in blue. And look at that. It's all been hidden. It'll still play back with those tempo changes, but we're just not going to see them. Also, I don't want to see this standard tuning or the title. It's not important for the purposes of having it play back in this fashion. So now I'll go to File, Style Sheet, Header and Footer. I'm going to uncheck Title, Apply, and so that went away. And then go to Page and Score Format. This is where we need to be to get rid of the standard tuning, though you might want to include that. I want to get rid of it, so that's under Tuning, Display Tuning, Off, Apply. We see that went away. Now hit OK. Also, we don't need this instrument label, so to get rid of that, just click on Track and see here the instrument label, S Guitar. Just going to erase that. Now that disappeared. And I think I'll also get rid of this dynamic marker under this style sheet window, notation, and then scroll down a bit. Under this symbols section, here you have hide dynamics. Apply, we see that went away. Okay, and this piece is in D minor. So just to get rid of some of these accidentals, I'm going to change the key. So I've chosen D minor, hit OK. And so that made a lot of the accidentals go away, which just makes things a little bit cleaner. So now everything's looking good. I'm just going to take a quick look. And at the end we have this kind of weird looking section. And if we did a screen recording right now, when I got to the end here, here's what would happen. And I'm trying to go for a consistent look, so I want this final bar to be played back in a similar fashion to the previous ones. And from trial and error, I figured out the way to do that is to first add a bar here to extend this last note so that the music ends on a section of 4 bars. I'm just going to copy the preceding note, paste it in here, and for good measure, I'll tie it to the previous note. I go into View, Design Mode, and then I just extend these out and just try to make them look a little more equal, but that's still not enough. We need to add yet another page. So now I go to View, get out of Design Mode. So I'm just going to hit the right arrow to start another bar, and that immediately goes to the next page. And this I found is enough to achieve what I'm trying to do. And now when we get to the end, it's going to play back more consistently with the playback in the previous sections. Okay, so I'll go back to the beginning. And now we're ready to do a screen recording. We know that each 4-bar section is going to be played back in the same real estate on the screen. And you can increase the resolution if you want. This will get us a crisper capture. So because I'm already using a screen capture program to make this tutorial, I'm using OBS, I can just continue recording. Now in your case, you'll need to use some kind of screen recorder. On Mac, there's QuickTime Player, so you could use that for screen recording, or some other program, such as OBS, which is an awesome screen recorder program and free. So I'm going to play this piece from start to end, and I'll skip ahead. Now for the final stretch, finally, we're going to add that music notation playback on top of the music video. So here I am in Final Cut Pro. The process will be similar for any video editing program. I've already imported the music video, and here I am at the point where the performance begins. And also I've imported into the project the screen recording of the music notation playback. So I'm going to drag that screen recording onto the timeline. And because I did that screen recording with audio output from Guitar Pro, that gives me a good visual cue of how to line things up. But even if you didn't have audio, you still have the cue visually in the playback, in the music notation playback. So I already see that the playback is about there. Now we're going to drop the volume of the screen recording. And now what we want to do is crop and trim a bit So I'm clicking here on the crop, trim. That looks pretty good. I'll scale it up a bit. And then move it towards the bottom. Let me scale it a little more. Okay, now I'll go to full screen. We'll play this back, and if all worked well, if all the pieces of this puzzle came together, you're going to see very accurate synchronization between the music notation playback and the performance in the video. So already we see it's very well synced up, even though we don't see any of those tempo markings in the notation. Those tempos were applied when we pressed play in the music notation program in Guitar Pro and did the screen recording. So I won't play the whole thing. Let's go to the very end. See how this end part is synced up. Start from around here. Okay, so I think you'll agree that's pretty accurate synchronization between the notation and the actual music performance. And that concludes the tutorial. There are a lot of parts here, a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces of that puzzle, but if you follow each step, you should be able to apply this procedure to your own projects to have very accurate music notation and music video playback synchronization. Thanks for watching, and look out for the next video.